The first thing I felt was the cold, not the gentle chill of a winter morning, but the bone-deep cold of a room that had never known proper heating. The second thing I felt was the pain, a dull, throbbing ache that seemed to radiate from every joint in my body. My head pounded, my throat was raw, and when I tried to move, my muscles screamed in protest. I opened my eyes. The room was a proper noble's chamber, though sparse and neglected. Moonlight filtered through a cracked window, casting pale silver stripes across the floor. Dust motes danced in the beams, and the air smelled of medicine, old wood, and the faint, lingering scent of decay. This isn't my apartment. The thought came slowly, drifting up through the fog of my confusion. My apartment had been a cramped studio in a rundown part of the city. The ceilings were low, the walls were thin, and the only view was of the brick wall of the neighboring building. I'd spent 5 years in that place, scraping together enough money for rent and food, surviving on instant noodles and the fading memories of a life I'd once had, a wife, a daughter, a career. All gone now, all taken from me by men in suits who wanted me to cook the books, and when I refused, they destroyed me. Blacklisted, divorced alone, and then in a dark alley on a rainy night, a knife in the stomach. A hit they'd waited 3 years to carry out, just to make sure no one would connect it to them. I died in that alley. I remembered the wet cobblestones, the metallic taste of blood, the fading sound of footsteps. My last thought had been bitter. If I'd been smarter, more ruthless, maybe I could have won. But this wasn't the alley. The cold stone beneath me was different. The air smelled of medicine and old wood. And this wasn't my body. I looked down at my hands. Pale, long-fingered, trembling. Not the calloused hands of a man who'd spent years hunched over a keyboard. These were the hands of someone young, someone who'd never worked a day in his life, and yet they felt familiar. Foreign and familiar at the same time, like wearing someone else's clothes. This isn't my body. This isn't my life. A flood of foreign memories rushed through my mind. A different childhood, a different family, a different name. I saw a young boy with silver hair and blue eyes running through the halls of a grand manor. I saw a mother, a servant girl, beautiful and kind, who died when he was 6. I saw a father who never looked at him with anything but shame. A stepmother who smiled with her lips and poisoned him with her eyes. A half-brother who took pleasure in cruelty. A sister who controlled the money and didn't care about anyone else. And a girl, a childhood friend who'd watched over him since they were children, whose worried face now hovered at the edge of my fading memories. His name was William Habsburg, bastard son of Duke Aldous, Duke of Maple City, 18 years old. Poisoned slowly over the course of months by the woman who killed his mother. Died of a fever an hour ago. A sharp knock on the door broke the silence. "My lord, are you awake? The Duke has summoned you." I sat up slowly, feeling the room spin around me. My hands gripped the rough wool blanket, steadying myself. The hearing. Right? The day they would send me to the wastes, just like in the strategy games I used to play. Crusader Kings, Total War, Civilization. But this wasn't a game. This was real, and the stakes were my life. I forced myself out of bed, staggering as my legs nearly gave out. My body was weak, malnourished, ravaged by the slow poison placed in my meals. My stepmother, through the servants, had been putting it in my food. But my mind was sharp, sharper than it had ever been. 5 years of playing strategy games, of reading history, of studying how empires rise and fall, all of that was still there, all of that was mine. They want me to die. They want my inheritance, and that's what this is. But they don't know who I really am. They don't know what I know in my last life. I played by the rules and lost everything. But here, I intend to make up for all I lost. The door swung open, and Elena stepped inside. She was a plain girl, maybe 17, with brown hair pulled back in a simple bun and eyes that held too much worry for someone her age. She carried a basin of water, a cloth, and a clean tunic. "My lord, please, you're not well. Let me help you." I looked at her, and for a moment, the foreign memories surged again. The previous William had loved this girl, loved her with the quiet devotion of a man who had nothing else to hold on to. He'd never told her. He'd been too scared, too broken, too beaten down by years of humiliation. But now, I was in control. And I saw something else in Elena's eyes. Loyalty and devotion. She helped me dress, her hands gentle but efficient. As she worked, she spoke in hushed tones, telling me what she'd overheard in the servants' quarters. The Duke's advisors had been meeting in private. The stepmother, Lady Victoria, had been making all the arrangements. She'd been speaking of how I was destined for greatness in the north. "I heard them, my lord. They're planning to send you to the Hellish Wastes. They call it pioneering work, but everyone knows it's exile. Death. They're sending you to die, William." I didn't flinch. I didn't show any emotion at all. Instead, I looked at myself in the cracked mirror on the wall. Silver hair, blue eyes, pale skin, the face of a boy who'd been beaten down his entire life. But there was something else in those eyes now. Something cold, something calculating. "Let them try. The Great Hall of House Habsburg had witnessed many things in its centuries of existence. Wars, weddings, funerals, betrayals. But today, it would witness something it had never seen before. A boy assumed to be incapable of walking strode into the hall unassisted. I, William Habsburg, the bastard, the weakling, the failure, walked through those doors with my head high. My silver hair bounced as I strode towards the throne. My blue eyes were clear. I'd been dressed in a simple black tunic, the only fine clothing left in my sparse wardrobe. I looked like a man who had a fresh lease on life and nothing to lose. The whispers began as soon as I entered. They'd expected me to be carried in, or not to show up at all. I was standing tall in front of my stepmother, who was shocked to see me healthy and sound. That made her nervous. Well, the sickly lamb has risen from his deathbed. I'm touched, truly. I was worried I'd have to send the servants to carry you in. My half-brother Ashford's voice dripped with mockery. The golden son of House Habsburg, charming, handsome, and utterly vicious. He'd murdered the original William's mother in collaboration with his mother, and taken pleasure in the cruelty. I wouldn't want to disappoint you, brother. I know how much you look forward to seeing me. The response was unexpected. The old William would have flinched, would have hung his head in shame. I just stood there, staring at him with cold blue eyes. Ashford's smirk flickered just slightly. Duke Aldous Habsburg sat at the head of his golden throne, slumped in his chair like a man already dead. Once a mighty man, but now broken hollow, a man who'd given up his estate years ago. He knew the truth about the evil scheming and plotting of his wife. But he was too weak to act, too cowardly to speak. His guilt made him controllable, and Duchess Victoria knew exactly how to control him. William, I have called you here because you are now of age and it is time for you to fulfill your duty to this house. The words were mechanical, rehearsed. The Duke didn't even look at me. The North needs to be reclaimed. The Empire has called for pioneers. And you, William Habsburg, will answer that call on behalf of House Habsburg. I was being exiled, banished to a land of monsters and death, where every previous expedition had ended in annihilation. The Hellish Wastes, they called it. The cursed North, a place so corrupted that even the spiritual center had declared it beyond salvation. The family had been planning this for months. They debated which of the sons to sacrifice, and in the end, the bastard was the obvious choice. No one would miss me. No one would mourn me. And when I died, as I inevitably would, they would divide my inheritance among themselves and celebrate. To assist you in this noble endeavor, House Habsburg has set aside 1,500 gold coins and 4 servants. It is a generous gift. The stepmother's voice was honey and venom. Duchess Victoria Habsburg was the real power in this house. She'd orchestrated everything, the poisoning, the exile, the slow destruction of her husband's will. Her son was her puppet, her daughter was her pawn, and I was the obstacle she'd been trying to remove for years. I waited for my father to continue, but he signaled me to speak. Generous. Father, you're sending me to the wastes with 1,500 gold and a few servants. My brother received Philan City with a full treasury and 1,000 soldiers. My sister was given trade routes worth 600,000 gold a year. And none of what they do is half as dangerous as what I am now sent to do. Surely, Father, I deserve more than this. The hall fell silent. No one had ever heard me speak like this before. I spoke like a diplomat, like someone that had planned many wars, or someone that was responsible for managing an entire estate. Even the stepmother was shocked. Everyone was expecting me to just accept my fate because that is what I usually did. But I was different now. Duke Aldous shifted uncomfortably. But before he could speak, the Duchess cut in. Greed is no virtue in a noble dear boy. You've received quite enough. I've received quite enough of your poison, you mean? The words hit the room like a thunderbolt. Victoria's face went pale. Ashford's hand moved to his sword. The guard shifted nervously. But I just stood there, calm as still water. You think I don't know what you've been doing? You think I don't know that you have been slowly poisoning me? I let the words hang in the air, watching their faces twist with confusion and fear. But don't worry. I'm not here to accuse anyone. I'm here to accept your generous offer. I'll go north. I'll pioneer the wastes. And when I come back, healthy and sound, I'll be bringing an army with me. I requested to take my leave, and my father raised his hands and bade me farewell. I turned and strode forward as the whole room looked at me in awe. My father's eyes were hopeful. In his soul, he was happy that I could finally stand up for myself. And in his heart, he could only wish that the child he ignored would survive the dangerous north and come back worthy to be called a Habsburg. The walk back to my chambers was a blur. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding. But my mind was clear. I'd done what I needed to do. I'd planted the seeds of doubt in the entire family and showed them that I wasn't the same weak, broken boy. And now I needed to prepare. Alina caught up with me in the corridor, her face white with terror. She supported me as I walked towards my chambers. What did you do? They'll kill you. I know. You're still going north? I stopped and turned to face her. My cold blue eyes softened just a fraction. Alina, I've been given a second chance and I'm not going to waste it. The North is a death sentence to them. But to me, it's an opportunity. A kingdom waiting to be claimed. And I'm going to claim it. But you have nothing? No army, no supplies, no protection. I smiled. It was a cold, calculating smile. I have 1,500 gold coins, I have you. And I have something they don't. I reached out and placed my hand on her shoulder. Come with me. Help me build something. Something new. Something better than this rotting empire. I can't promise you safety and comfort for now, but I can promise you that you'll never have to bow to anyone again. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my eyes for something. Hope, madness, truth. And finally she nodded. Where do we start? First, we go to the slave market. We need soldiers, craftsmen, managers. And we need to find talented people. Talented people are hard to find. The empire gathers them all for themselves. I smiled again. Leave that to me. I have a way of finding gems in the dirt. As I sat down on my bed alone, I called up my ledger, a blue, invisible screen that gave me information about myself, about opportunities, about danger, resources, talents close by. It also came with a custom map that kept updating as my eyes saw new lands and territories. The system flickered before me, and as I closed my eyes to sleep, my last thought was, in my old life, I played by the rules and lost everything. Here, there are no rules like the other life, so I intend to gain all I lost in this new life. Tomorrow, the real game begins. The morning sun rose over Maple City like a pale, watery eye struggling to pierce the morning mist. For me, it was the first sunrise I'd seen in this new world that actually felt like a beginning rather than an end. I stood at the window of my chambers, watching the city stir to life below. Merchants were already setting up their stalls. Laborers trudged toward the docks, and in the distance, the great slave market of Maple City was beginning its daily business. This is where it starts. This is where I build my army. Alina entered quietly, carrying a tray of bread and watered wine. She'd barely slept, too anxious about what the day would bring. But when she saw the calm determination on my face, her fears eased, just a little. My lord, the guards outside say the market opens at dawn. They've been watching us. I think they're expecting us to carry more than we were ordered to carry. As we spoke, the accountant requested to come in. After I signaled him in, he brought out the 1,500 gold coins and handed them to me and told me the 4 slaves were outside my door awaiting my orders. I thanked him as he left. After a few seconds, the system notification flickered in my face, updating me. But I had something they didn't, a system that turned investment into gold. Every coin I spent on my domain would be doubled at the end of the month. Every slave I bought, every tool I purchased, every seed I planted would compound. It was a cheat code in a world that didn't know such things existed. They think they're sending me to die. They don't realize they're funding my dreams. Before I left for the slave market, Elena brought a small chest to me and told me that my mother gave it to her hours before she died, making her promise to only give it to me when situations looked hopeless. I took the chest with shaking hands and opened it with tears in my eyes as memories of the old William's mother flashed in my mind. Inside was a piece of folded parchment, a necklace with a wolf pendant, and a pouch. I opened the parchment first. In a delicate, fading hand, I read my mother's words. William, be strong and be very courageous. I love you, always. I picked up the necklace and wore it around my neck. The wolf pendant felt warm against my chest, as if it had been waiting for me. Finally, I picked up the pouch and opened it. Inside were gold coins. I was shocked. Before I could count them, the system flashed in my face. Previous assets, the 600 gold coins, 4 servants, 1 dedicated maiden, Alina gained. 700 gold coins, mother's hidden inheritance, a current total, were 5,200 gold coins. I was so grateful for this gift and thanked Elena for being faithful to her promise. How did my mother know? Alina shook her head. She said she always knew you would need it one day. She said you were destined for greatness. But she never explained what that meant. I looked at the wolf pendant around my neck and wondered, what was its significance? Was it just a keepsake, or did it hold deeper meaning? I tucked the thought away for later, one mystery at a time. First, I need to build my army. The slave market of Maple City was a place of desperate commerce. Iron cages lined the main square, their occupants huddled together for warmth against the morning chill. Merchants in fine linen robes prowled the aisles, examining the goods with the cold, appraising eyes of cattle buyers. I walked through the market with Elena at my side, my silver hair and blue eyes drawing immediate attention. A noble in the slave market was nothing unusual. Nobles and merchants were the primary buyers of slaves in the empire. But I was different. I was young. I was dressed simply, and my eyes were scanning the cages with an intensity that spoke of purpose. Focused. Looking beyond the obvious, the system shows me what others miss. The ledger's eye flickered to life in my mind's eye, overlaying the market with color-coded markers. Most of the slaves were tagged with dull gray markers, ordinary laborers, useful but unremarkable. But here and there, bright points of light appeared, and my heart quickened. Yes, there, the girl in the corner cage. She's glowing like a star. I made my way to the cage, gliding through the crowd of potential buyers. The slave inside was young, perhaps 18, with tangled hair and hollow cheeks. Her clothes were rags. Her wrists were raw from iron shackles, but her eyes were fierce, defiant, unbroken. Interesting choice, my lord. That one's been difficult, bit the last buyer who tried to examine her. The slaver was a weasel-faced man with a nose like a rat's snout and a smile like a knife wound. He'd seen my interest and was already calculating how much he could extract. She's a fighter. Most buyers don't want that. They want them broken. I turned and gave her a deep stare. She quickly hid her face between her hands. How much? She's a rare piece, my lord. Strong, healthy, plenty of fight left. Normally I'd ask 50 gold, but for you. 10 gold pieces. The slaver's face twisted in outrage. 10 gold? That's insulting. She's worth at least. You just told me she's difficult. Bites buyers. Doesn't work well with others. No one wants a slave they can't control. I'm taking a risk on her. 10 gold, and I take her off your hands. The slaver opened his mouth to argue, then saw the cold, unyielding look in my eyes. This wasn't a noble who could be bargained with. This was a man who'd already made up his mind. Fine, 10 gold, but I'm not throwing in any extras. I don't need extras, I need results. The transaction was swift. I handed over the coin, and the shackles were unlocked. The girl stumbled forward, rubbing her raw wrists, looking at me with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant curiosity. Why? Why did you choose me? Because I see that you have potential. Infinite potential, and I'm going to help you reach it. I turned to Elena. Take her to the bathhouse. Get her cleaned up, buy her proper clothes, and feed her. Elena hesitated, her eyes darting between me and the suspicious girl. My lord, is that wise? She's still a slave. She could. She's not a slave, Elena. She's a future soldier. Treat her like one. The next few hours were a blur of activity. I moved through the slave market like a chess master, acquiring piece after piece for my army. The ledger's eye guided me to hidden gems, slaves who'd been overlooked by other buyers because they were too troublesome or injured. James was a 40-year-old soldier who'd been cast out of the Imperial Army for speaking his mind. He was broad-shouldered, grim-faced, and radiated a quiet competence that I immediately recognized. He'd been passed over for promotions, given the worst assignments, and left to rot in obscurity because he refused to bow to corrupt superiors. Vince was a thin, bespectacled man who'd once been the chief financial advisor to the Duke of Silver City. He'd been framed for embezzlement by a rival and sold into slavery to silence him. His hands were still ink-stained from years of ledger work, and his eyes still held the sharp, calculating gleam of a man who understood numbers. Borg was a management expert who'd been imprisoned for refusing to falsify records for his noble employer. He was meticulous, detail-oriented, and completely unflappable. He looked like a man who'd accepted his fate and was simply waiting for the end. Ingid was a carpenter with a limp, injured in a construction accident, and discarded by his former employer. He was skeptical when I approached him, convinced that his injury made him useless. Ferris was a demoted quartermaster who'd been blamed for a logistics failure that wasn't his fault. He knew every supply route in the Empire, every merchant's weakness, every way to move men and materials efficiently. By midday, my party had grown dramatically. I'd purchased 1,000 slaves, most of them laborers and craftsmen. I'd secured 20 horses, 20 cattle, and enough grain and supplies to last 3 months. I'd also bought seeds for planting, hoping to cultivate the cursed land once it was purified. From the spiritual center, I purchased 12 magical gemstones. Through the help of the system, I could craft simple purification artifacts that purify the air and the land. The power of the artifact and the radius it covered depended on the size of the gem. Expenses: 260 gold, 1,000 slaves, 95,000 silver, 950 gold, 20 horses, 500 gold, 20 cattle, 300 gold, 300 bags of grain, 15,000 silver, 50 gold, 20 per 40 horses, 25 40 50 gold, 300 bags of seeds, 5,000 silver, 50 gold, 150 long swords, 7,000 silver, 70 gold, 150 spears, 3,000 silver, 30 gold per studel, 3,000 silver, 30 gold per studel, 3,000 silver, 30 gold per studel, 3,000 silver, 10 gold. Valerie emerged from the bathhouse transformed. Her tangled hair had been washed and brushed to a silky sheen. Her hollow cheeks had been filled by a proper meal. And her eyes, those fierce, defiant eyes, were no longer hostile. They were curious, watching, waiting to see what this strange noble would do next. You didn't buy me as a pleasure slave. I nodded. You've been a pleasure slave before. Almost. Some other noble bought me, tried to. But I bid him hard. So he sold me back. I've been passed around ever since. No one wants a slave who fights. I don't want a slave, I want a soldier, and soldiers fight. She stared at me, trying to understand. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever given her a choice. Where are you taking me? The north, the Hellish Wastes. She almost laughed. You're insane. Everyone dies in the north. Every expedition, every army, they all die. I know. That's why I'm going. Why? Because everyone else is too afraid to try. And when you're the only one willing to do something impossible, you either fail spectacularly or succeed beyond anyone's imagination. The caravan assembled at the city gates as the morning sun began its slow climb upward. 1,000 slaves, 4 servants, a handful of specialists, and a noble who'd been given a death sentence disguised as an opportunity. Alina stood beside me, her face pale but determined. She'd been with me since childhood, and she'd never seen me like this, confident, commanding, utterly unafraid. My lord, how many of us will make it? I didn't answer immediately. I was looking at the customized map in my system. All of us. And anyone who dies, dies fighting for something worthwhile. That's more than most people get. Listen to me, all of you. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm a fool, a dead man walking, leading you to your doom. And maybe you're right. Maybe we'll all die. But maybe, just maybe, we'll live. And if we live, we'll build something new, something better, something no one else has ever dared to build. I held up my hand. I'm not going to pretend that the journey is not dangerous. But I promise that if you follow my orders, you will be safe. Fight for me, work for me, and you'll be rewarded. And when the world looks at the north and sees only death, they'll see us, standing tall and unbroken. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some were inspired. Most were still terrified, but none of them were walking away. That's good enough for now. Fear and loyalty are the currencies of power in this world, and I have both. After my speech, the system update flashed in my face. Assets? This would give me time to train the men, create the purification lamps, and craft the magical potions which the system claimed would awaken the gifted or strengthen my soldiers by 4 times. As we traveled, I ordered James and Valerie to pick out 300 men and train them. The first day passed in relative quiet, the caravan moving along the main road toward the borderlands. At the end of that day, I sat alone in my tent, the 12 magical gemstones arranged before me like jewels on a merchant's table. The system interface flickered, displaying diagrams and instructions I'd never seen before. I selected a gem, placed my hand on it, and felt a surge of energy like static electricity, but warmer. The gem began to glow, and with careful precision, I guided the system's power into shaping it. It was exhausting work, draining my energy with each successful lamp. By the time I'd crafted the first purification lamp, my hands were shaking and my vision was blurry. But the lamp worked. I could feel the corruption in the air beginning to recede around me. This will help clear the fog. On the 3rd day, we reached Silver City and rested in the forest on its outskirts. The area showed signs of the corruption, a few withered trees, twisted plants, and strange, glowing fungi that pulsed with an eerie light. I decided to test the purification lamps in the forest. I set 2 lamps at the ends of the camp before I went to bed. By the morning of the next day, the withered trees had received life. The twisted plants had completely vanished, and the strange glowing fungi was nowhere to be seen. The whole camp was amazed. By the 4th day, the gray fog had begun to close in, and the mood of the caravan had turned grim. By this time, I had crafted 8 purification lamps and 5 potions that helped awaken gifted people or strengthen soldiers. I did this with the help of the system. Before we crossed the boundaries of the northern waste, I spent the evenings studying my system ledger, tracking every expense, every asset, every variable. I'd spent 3,610 gold coins on the expedition so far. My remaining treasury was 1,590 gold coins. In a few weeks, the first monthly dividend would come due, and my investment would be doubled to 7,220 gold coins. It's not enough, not nearly enough, but it's a start, and a start is all I need. I called Valerie and James and gave each of them 1 bottle of the potion, promising it would make them stronger. After they drank it, they witnessed a transformation in their spirit and in their body. For Valerie, it was her spirit. She felt like a key had been broken and a door had been opened in her soul. Something ancient and powerful stirred within her, waiting to be unleashed. For James, it was his body. He felt immeasurable strength flow through his limbs, as if years of neglect and decay had been stripped away. His eyes burned with new fire. I told them to take time to practice alone and see what they could do. The next day, Valerie ran into my tent, excited and confused, startling me. I jumped up from my bed in panic, thinking there was an attack. After she explained what she was able to do, The ability to summon things out of nothing. I explained to her that she was a uniquely gifted being and that for her powers to grow, she must bind herself to someone. If not, she might go mad. After a few hours of training, she could summon big wolves, eagles, and bears. The training was exhausting for her, and we ended that day's session on the 5th day. I asked Valerie to come for personal training and told James to keep training the men. This time, I told Valerie to summon an eagle and let it fly, which she did easily. After that, I told her to try to see through the eagle's eyes. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and suddenly, she could see vast areas and land masses. She immediately told me she could see everywhere. I was glad because my plan was coming into place. I told her, now cast your gaze towards the fog and fly into it. At the same time, I opened my custom map and hoped this would work. Immediately, as the eagle flew into the fog, my map showed an updating notification on my system screen. After a few seconds, the map was updated and I could see the wastelands. I told Valerie to use the eagle to go a kilometer north, then half a kilometer east, then turn around and do a kilometer west. As she did, my map was updating. Now, I could see polluted rivers, broken down cities along the river that flows from east to west. Then I could see red dots, which signified hordes of undead, both animals and humans. After an hour and 30 minutes, we took a break to resume later in the evening. On the night of the 5th day, as the caravan camped in a shallow valley, the attack came. James was the first to notice something was wrong. He'd been with the posted sentries, his instincts honed by years of combat. When he saw movement in the shadows beyond the campfire's light, he knew immediately what it was. Attack, form up, shields to the perimeter, he whispered. The camp exploded into organized chaos. Slaves turned soldiers, grabbed shields, spears, spiked sticks, and swords, forming up with the others. It was not up to standard, but it would hold, and in the center of it all, I stood calm, my system ledger flickering with warnings threat level. Moderate, asset risk, low sprint recommended action. Engage and liquidate. Valerie, with me, James, hold the perimeter. Don't let them break through. The attackers were well-equipped for assassins disguised as bandits, full leather armor, steel blades, and the disciplined movements of trained soldiers. They weren't amateurs, they were professionals, assassins sent by my brother to finish the job, but I had expected them. Valerie, your bow, I need you to aim for the leader. She didn't question me. She grabbed her bow, aimed at the leader in front, and loosed an arrow in one fluid motion. It was a good shot. A clean shot, but Valerie's hands were trembling, her aim slightly off. It didn't matter. The arrow struck the leader in the chest and he went down hard. Another fluid shot, and this time Valerie decided that the arrowhead should erupt with bright blue light. This sent a shockwave through the enemy formation. Men screamed. Horses bolted. And in the chaos, my forces struck. Now, attack. Break them before they regroup. James led the charge, his sword flashing in the firelight. The slaves turned soldiers, transformed by fear into something more desperate, more dangerous. Followed behind him, their crude tools raised high. Valerie stood at my side, her eyes wide with shock. What was that? What did I do? You're unlocking new abilities. The gift that's been sleeping inside you is opening its eyes. I touched her head in an approving way. The battle was over in a matter of minutes. The assassins were no match for the desperation of a cornered force fighting for its life. By the time the last enemy fell, the camp was littered with bodies, and no enemies survived. I walked among the dead, searching the bodies with methodical precision. I found the leader, his hand still clutching his dagger. I ransacked his vest, and in the hidden pocket, I saw 700 gold coins. Just as the system predicted, I smiled and tucked the purse into my belt. Clean up the bodies. Burn them. Retrieve their horses, which amounted to 51. We leave at dawn. James approached, his face grim but his eyes burning with newfound respect. My lord, how did you know? I knew someone would try. My family doesn't want me to succeed. They want me to die. And I intend to disappoint them. I turned to address the survivors, my voice carrying across the camp. Listen to me, all of you. We just survived an assassination attempt. We just fought off trained killers, and we won. Not because we're stronger, not because we're better, but because we refused to lie down and die. I paused, letting the words sink in. I'm not a great general. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I'm going to win. And if you fight for me, you'll eat better than any free man in the empire. Your labor is your capital. Invest it wisely. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and for the first time, I saw something in their eyes that hadn't been there before. They're starting to believe. Good. Belief is the first currency of power. The system flickered before me of assets.